And when we enter the realm of what's painful and human and where we need help emotionally and where we should see a professional, like a doctor or psychiatrist, where does Chassidus, does Chassidus keep you? Is that for the Nefesh Alekitz and Nefesh Bahamas? Or does Chassidus and Mashpiyim extend to the Nefesh HaChiyunis? And I think the lines are becoming a little blurred.
I think a lot of people, though, are under the impression that, everything is in, all the answers are in this. So they're kind of disappointed when they find out that that's not the case.
Can I confess something? I know we've been talking already for I don't know how long, and honestly, for maybe 50% of what we're speaking, I have no freaking clue what we're talking about.
Adir Hu bo el yoinim bochuru batachtoinim am mamam o yam mamam am mamam o yam mamam o el yoinim batachtoinim.
Welcome to Extra Sauce. My name is Hayom Yom, and this is part 2 of Lubavitch in 2019. Recorded Farbrengen in my garage from about, 3 months ago now. I took a bit of a hiatus. It wasn't planned that way. I was thinking I would post all 3 parts and then take a little break, but anyway, worked out this way. I got myself into a bit of a scheduling funk, but more about that another time. I don't want to go on too long with introductions. Would like to just jump into it, but some context is probably necessary. There's kind of an elephant in the room. I was able to hear that during the editing because we weren't exactly talking about it. We were talking, as Baruch put it, arum de zach, around the issue, because I was kind of trying to avoid talking about it, not to get lost in gossip and pointing fingers. But there was a lead up to the theme of the Farbrengen, which was this speech that a rabbi made in the community about a week before, and it was being passed around over WhatsApp, decrying the state of affairs in the Lubavitch community that educators would have to go to outside seminars to learn about modalities of education. Sorry, that was my alarm. And amongst many things that was written in that letter was the sentiment of a separation, like we're kind of living defensively, and that Torah should be self-sufficient. We don't need to be going to outside places, and it was this overriding sentiment that I see and hear at different points that frustrates me, because if there's one thing I think Chassidus has tried to continuously convey to us, is that we're not at war with the world. Rather, the function of Chassidus is one where we are revealing the beautiful state of the world, even though we experience it as something differently. And but at times we can fall into these religious patterns of feeling isolated, separate from, and living defensively. I remember this conversation I had with this one rabbi some years ago, a Lubavitch guy, and we're talking about his students going to therapy, and he's like, I'm sick and tired of this conversation that I keep having with people, as if Torah cares about one's psychological well-being. There's no source for such a thing. The Torah is interested in one thing, that you should be serving the Eibishter. Now, it happens to be that it is a requirement to watch over your health, and included in physical health is also your mental state and all that stuff. But other than that, So I remember at the time I applaud his honesty, but then I said, if in your mind they're separate enough to need to have to go to a source in Torah to find a reason why it is okay or even mandatory for someone to take care of their health, meaning to say that those two are separate, then can you blame someone who cares about themselves enough that they now feel obligated to step away from it? Meaning to say, can we all agree that ideally there shouldn't even be a place in which someone can consider that those two things are separate? I'm contrasting that conversation with a conversation I had with a friend of mine recently who told me that he said when he goes to his Rav for a shaila that comes up and whatever, he's a family man. He says it's a spiritual experience because walking into the rabbi, he's worried about what the answer might be. And is it going to be something that is life-affirming, that is helping him in life, or something that is a burden? And then since he's going to a reputable Rav, the Rav is taking him and his life and his family's life into account, not just the text. And therefore, it's an experience of realizing how much Torah is life-affirming, not life-negating. And Chassidus is supposed to be the method at which we see that expressed. So it's kind of unsettling when we see the reverse. Anyway, so that was some of the themes that we were talking about in the conversation. And the audio didn't catch it, but at one point, Shmuly Metzger brought up this Torah about the concept of putting aside one's own rutzon for the Eibishter's, and is it one in which I push my will down, or that I realize that they are in truth one and the same? And we're also talking about a few Hayom Yoms in particular. One from the month of Tevis. I'm not going to pull it up right now, but the point of which it makes the point that there's a Yitzias Mitzrayim that takes place, as we know, every day. Is that Yitzias Mitzrayim is one, just according to the literal letter of the Torah, in which someone is going out of their limitations and boundaries. And that looks like running away from and breaking. Whereas the Yitzias Mitzrayim, according to the Chassidus, is one in which you're not running away from, you're not living in opposition to, but rather revealing the beautiful state that the world really is in. And we'll share more in part 2 about that, kind of go back to some sources. But here's the Farbrengen. It goes a bit all over the place, but it should be entertaining. I hope you enjoy it, and I will talk to you at the beginning of the next one.
So we're sitting here on Crown Street. 4 guys, kind of, I don't know. 5. No, I'm saying, yeah, 5. Around the table, we have Hanan, Shmuly, myself, and Baruch, and Chezzi. We all have other things to do, but we want to Farbrengen with each other. And we also kind of want to include people who would love to Farbrengen with us too.
Hayom.
And someone asked me, who's your audience? What are you doing this? What's it about? And I could say, I don't really know. But I know what I don't want. What I don't want is, I'll say this story first. I'm looking at the skip the Hagdamas, but I'm going to do this one. I think this is one Hagdama that includes all Hagdamas, and maybe anytime we have a Farbrengen, it should start with this Hagdama, which is the story of Peretz Mochkin that I said, which is they invited him to Farbrengen at yeshiva, doesn't matter where. It was a Yom Kippur or something, and they invited him to Farbrengen, and he was sharing a story.
And as he's sharing the story, one of the Bachrim sitting there says, it says it in the book that the Friedrich Rebbe wrote the story a bit differently. So Rebbe said, why did you invite me here? One of you with a better and louder, stronger voice could have stood up on a chair and take the book off the shelf and read it straight from the book. You would have had it exactly correctly. You didn't need me. Says Elamai, I'm assuming that you brought me here because you didn't want the story. You wanted the experience of the story. How I experienced that story based on how I heard it from another chassid who experienced that story. And you want the lived experience, albeit incorrect, rather than out of a book. We don't need books, and we don't need to be quoting things. And as far as I'm concerned, we don't need to be selling anything. There's enough resources and books and websites and places for anyone who wants to be sold on Chabad and anything else out there. We don't need to be doing that. But maybe there's something of value in sharing our experience around those things, around those texts, around those stories, around those, whatever it is. And that's where there's something unique about each of us sitting around here, because we've all each experienced the place, the text, the stories, the Farbrengens, whatever it is, differently. And that's good and that's valuable.
The key, I imagine, is coming to realize that there actually are the same thing. Getting me out of the way so I can realize that there are the same thing altogether. Which is, you can't do that when you're fighting. You can't do that when your whole approach is that you're fighting against something. And that's what ticks me off about this shit, which is there's no room for even the consideration that maybe my Ratzin is really the Eibishter's Ratzin and vice versa, because I'm fighting against something. There's no. So then the only gimmick is the only game in town is, can I fight successfully enough? So there's no room to ever come to maybe I actually want to do the Eibishter's Ratzin, and maybe there aren't really the fact that I experience them as two separate things. Yeah. Is the falsehood.
The Rebbe says that Shliach, Mashiach is Shliach with your Eser Kechet Nefesh. You do it your way. And I think, yeah, so that's the beauty. That's the beauty. In the Rebbe's Weltanschenk, Vasi Lagani is the world intrinsically is beautiful. It's an intrinsically beautiful thing. The Eibishter created, the same way a child is born and is naturally not a racist, the child is naturally happy. A child is just so too. The world is the same thing, and if you let a kid, a 6-year-old kid into Manhattan, he'll do maftzayim. You don't have to worry that he's going to get racist. So it's very empowering. It's very empowering. Yeah. At the same time, there's clearly a bittul. So the question becomes, what's what here? And again, what's so important is that. And I think this is an important conversation for now, because Judaism in itself is a paradox, because you have a hedonistic person, he's very involved in the physical world. Then you have a guy sitting on a mountain in Tibet, and he's above it. And Yiddishkeit, it seems, is that it's both or none, or one or the other at the same. And it's interesting. I heard a story. A great story, which encapsulates Yiddishkeit in a way. One Yom Kippur, I was speaking about Atzmos. I tried to the best of my ability, Farbrengen about the theme of Atzmos for the 26 hours of Yom Kippur. It's like a running commentary. Anyway, afterwards, a guy, I was having coffee with a guy. He lives in Vienna, and he was just in town. He's an American boy. He's an artist. And he said, what you were talking about, it reminds me of the following story. He related a Chassidic Maisa, so to speak, a Chassidic narrative. He says that Alexander the Great, he's on one of his voyages east, and he bumps into a Buddhist monk, like sort of meditating. So he tells the guy, well, what are you doing? The guy says, I'm in pursuit of nothing. He says, I'm in pursuit of nothing and nothingness. So Alexander the Great bursts out laughing. He's like, what kind of ridiculous thing is that? And the guy says, what brings you here? He says, I'm conquering the world. And the monk bursts out laughing, like you can't even conquer yourself. You know, your days are limited. And by the time you come here east, who even knows if the countries you conquered west are still under your control? So like they both laugh at each other and then they continue on their way and the story is over. The question becomes who's right. From a Chassidic perspective, they're both right or they're both wrong or somehow you got to pay attention to both of them. So we're conquering the world with the conquering here is that there's something higher and something real, and at the same time that we're tapping into something. And I don't like to use these platitudes because just you go into that territory, but that theme.
From 770 we're marching out to victory without a doubt, to corners full we're marching out. Nation after nation.
Baruch, do you? I want to ask Baruch. You connect with the song?
Are we back?
We're on. I have a question for you.
All right, I don't need to know.
I was always very uncomfortable with the song, even in when I was in the heat of it in camp. They push it. You went to amusement park, and you're around in Busch Gardens with other, nation after nation we are. It sounds a little like strange.
That's precisely
not just strange, but militant.
So Alexander the Great. So what are we conquering? That's the point. I think that's the point. Is that conquering? Alexander the Great was conquering. If Alexander teamed up with Buddhist guy, and they're like, we're conquering the world with the concept that there's something that transcends ourselves. Alexander passed. I think he passed away. He I don't know. He was young, relatively 30 in his 30s. He's young guy.
Here's a problem. Okay. That's beautiful, right?
Right.
But no fucking 17-year-old counselor, and certainly not the 10-year-old kids, and certainly not the director, whatever, is conquering themselves before or after or in between them singing that song. And the premise of them conquering the world does not give any opening for them to think that maybe they actually have to conquer themselves. Whereas someone who is completely foreign to these, like, they're busy conquering the world, and whatever happened to like their edel alain, and could we just acknowledge for a minute that you can't have it both ways. Lubavitch turned into this crusade, and it left behind, the Avodah thing to a degree, like a significant degree. Now, that may be for good reason. I had this Hayom Yom thing, but since we're on it, you asked this morning, let's talk about what is a Chassid in 2019. Last night I was at somewhere, not a Chabad thing, but someone shared this story that the Rebbe repeated about the Chassid who asked the Rebbe Rashab in Germany, was is a Chassid, right? And the lamplighter story. And there's a whole lead up, right? And it goes through different iterations. Was is a Chassid? A Chassid is a lamplighter. What does it mean to be a lamplighter? Okay. And then how can you be a lamplighter in a desert? Well, yes, you go into the desert, and even though it's a desert, at the very least, you light a lamp so that people around know the state of their darkness. And then what about it if it's in an ocean? Well, then you undress and you jump into the ocean. Siras Nefesh. And then, what do I do if I don't see any lamps? Well, that's because you're not a lamplighter, so you're not seeing lamps. Because if you're grub, you're just going to see grubkite. You're going to see coarseness in other people. But when you refine yourself, you'll start seeing refinement in others. And then in the process of doing that, once I became Adel, this is the line of questioning, right? What do I do then? Do I grab someone by the throat and light their lamp? No, never by the throat, but by the lapel. And to me, there's like meaning in each one of those stages. But and maybe there's like different stages of Chabad and Lubavitch that were appropriate for each one of those. My personal feeling is that we're no longer jumping into oceans anymore. Like, that's not what we need to be doing right now. There was a time and place for that. And even the desert thing, if you want to call that maybe America in the 40s and the 50s and the 60s, I don't see that being like the calling of the day either. I do see the calling of the day. There's that like maybe like we have to become Adel because we were busy running around for like 60 years lighting people's lamps, and we forgot that we also, have lamps to light. And like, and maybe we've also like been grabbing each other and ourselves by the throat instead of the lapel. So
we grab ourselves by the throat and others by the lapel.
Exactly.
Could I just say before, because Shmuly, what you were saying before, you're like, like you can't look to mashpia for your emotional health. The problem is that a whole time that's what we're told, hafachba v'hafachba de kulaba. Everything in your life could be found in here. Altsteiten Torah, everything is here. So when somebody comes and says, I'm not finding it here, you can't suddenly say, oh, you should have gone to a therapist for this. And Nishnar them, I think that a lot of it is, I think everything is in there. In other words, I think a lot of the trauma that Chassidim might be experiencing now, and maybe why there's like a big surge in, Baruch is from the first ones to, he was Paiseches Atziner, him together with the other few guys to open those floodgates, and then there was a massive like a deluge. And at this point, it's already not even a chiddush. It's almost like a chiddush to not be like that, to not have those problems and those issues with the whole thing. And I think it's exactly what you said is that you talk have to have bittul. We once spoke about this on that chat, which is that you can't expect a person to have bittul if there's no person b'chlal. Until there's a person and you have addressed all of his emotional needs, or her emotional problems, there's no one that could have bittul yet. Bittul is only when the only person who could be mevatel myself is me. If somebody else is mevatel me, that's not bittul. That's just abuse or whatever. I don't know. Enslavement. It's enslavement. So I think we skipped over that whole part of building up the person before they voluntarily figure out that they should break themselves down.
It's like the opposite of that joke, but you could say the joke exactly the same way. The guy saying, "Ich bin garnished," and then the Rebbe says, you're taka garnished. But I'm saying we're going around being mevatel themselves, and we're taka garnished. There's no gimmick going on. We pashut feel like pieces of shit. So what's the big kunz? We're talking about this guy, Yosef Mizrahi. I mentioned his name. This guy who I don't have to go into detail. He just speaks a lot of disgusting stuff, right? About Jews, about Judaism, and like he finds whatever source in Torah he can find. Yeah. And I always puzzle me. I'm like, who are these hundreds of people? The guy fills the auditoriums, right? So I asked someone who was telling me that he likes him, whatever, Bukharian guy from Queens. That's about all I'll say. And then I said, why do you go there? He's like, listen, I'm not religious, but
I don't want anyone blowing smoke up my ass. I want to know where the buck lands. I may not be there, but give it to me straight. Right? Basically, he said that. Meaning to say, the religious dogmatic mind defaultly tends to
word defaultly, but
well, it's not a word, right? Tends to default to the thinking that whatever the most fire and brimstone extreme sentiment is where the truth is. V'haraya, why would anyone go to that extreme, right? And anything lighter than that must be just a lot of fluff, which is like very telling of the mindset. That's religion. It's crushing you. It's like hurting you. And if it's anything less, you're probably just feel good nonsense.
B'chlal, though, in anyone, the whole desire for somebody to tell you how things are is alone. It's a human thing. It's not a religious thing. Not many people want to take the responsibility of their own lives into their own hands. They'd rather be able to say, yeah, I don't know, I followed his advice. So worst comes to worst, I fucked up my life, but at least it's not my problem. I was just listening to what the other guy told me. And I don't think that people, it's a scary thing, right? When you ask a person, should I do this and this, and they say, I don't know. Now you have to make your own decision. And you know what the scariest thing about that is that you might make the wrong decision and you'll have no one to blame but yourself. And so most people, I think, would rather just say, tell me what to do. And so you turn to religion or to Chassidus, whatever it is, or to a teacher this, because it's a very frightening thing, right? And I think that's why this guy, he thinks that he's being a strong person, I imagine, by saying, tell me, give me I don't care. He doesn't care how tough Mizrahi is being on him, and I think a lot of us have this attitude where we're like, we know what the right thing is. Yeah, this is something that I heard a lot. I hear a lot of Chassidim will say, they're like, yeah, I know what the truth is. I know, but Sachakol, I just, I'm just, I have a Yetzer Hara. And I think a lot of people like to hear that too. Yep. They love saying like, that this is the MS and this, but you're whatever, you have a Yetzer Hara. No one would want to hear you say, actually, I'm not 100% sure that this is the MS. It's a Ken Zayin. It could be that maybe actually I have a thought, and it's an individual thought, right. And the thought is, I don't know that I could rely on the Rebbe to know what was best for me. I don't even think the Rebbe wanted me to think that way. I don't think the Rebbeinu Shalom wants that. Whatever the Rebbeinu Shalom even is, what that even means, I don't think that any true leader who's transmitting a real teaching to you would want you to. The best thing that Baruch said is that the greatest honor that he could render his parents was to do exactly what they did, which is to rebel against their parents. Hastis, because it's, in other words, the first thing that Avram did to become a Yid was he had to leave his home. He had to leave. People say, why was he such a good Jew? Why was he the best Jew? In fact, he was the first Jew because he found Hashem. It's such a stupid thing. He invented the whole thing in the first place. He did exactly the opposite of what everybody else was telling him to do, because he realized that the only way to experience God and a true religious experience is by stepping out of what was comfortable to him. So, yeah, somebody will want to tell you, everybody will want to ask, please tell me what to do, because it's a scary thing. I'm going to go suddenly make up a new path for myself and this. But, and that's back to what we were saying. The first thing that a person needs is to be Alexander the Great. You have to realize that you're a person with agency, and you're an individual. You're Adam Nivra Yechidi. That's the first thing. Before you could decide what kind of discipline you're going to adopt, what kind of bittul you're going to go to. And the problem is that there is no, we have a lot of training in bittul, but we have no training in the first part, which is that there has to be you. There has to be you. And because the scary thing is, because when you tell a person, when you empower a person to realize that they do have agency and they do have strength and that they could make decisions for themselves, there is a good chance that they won't follow what you told them to do. They might go and make taka, they might go and make a new religion. And that cannot happen.
It could lead to dancing.
What I'm going to say is this. Like this. I was reading an article about the best places to work in America. So that there's like an acronym. It's Google, Netflix, something. There's like an acronym. Anyway, the point is, the guy's saying Google's a horrible place to work because my manager is treating me like, it's very pressured. And I don't like Google because it's on the managerial level. So like this. If a person, there's so many sound bites out there of this, that, or this must be, the problems that all that we're discussing are on the managerial level. This must be a that guy. No. Because if you listen to 5 hours of Farbrengen...
Oh, I'm not talking about that, okay?
Because that's the movement.
No.
You're talking about sociological problems, not religious problems.
No.
Yes.
I'm not going to...
No, you want to know why? Because you could, I personally, I consider myself to be a chassid of the Rebbe, okay. Even if some other, and the things that I take from what the Rebbe said and wrote are the exact opposite of what many people in the establishment would say the Rebbe meant.
That's precisely what I'm saying.
But the problem is, so now the Rebbe empowered me to think on my own. So here, I try. The Rebbe is empowering me a whole time to think on my own. Sometimes to even think in contradiction to what he alone may, not what he said. In other words, I have my own idea. I have my own opinion. And so now, so you're saying, it's a managerial problem. It's not yes, everything is. The Rebbe is very highly edited. And so we're getting an edited version of Chassidus, and it's a very specific kind. It comes from a lot of the majority. Basically, it's trying to hold everybody together because we can't afford to lose numbers, and it's also a big slap in the face when we do lose a number.
There is Meshachist and anti-Meshachist, so... There is some competition.
I don't know any like protocols or elders of Zion, people meeting to like
it's built into the
you're right, but it's a conscious thing. It's a subconscious thing. I mean, it happened. The only reason that I could say that is because mipsari yachza. So I know how I you're right. It's arrogant of me to assume that everyone else would be thinking the same way that I would, but I think we're in a lot of ways we're the same, and the reality is when you have, let's say, a Yid who looks at the Rebbe's Torah and somehow that inspires him to go become a shliach in Ibiza where he's making where he's making a big party on Tisha B'Av with food and all this stuff, and we're like, this is an aberration. The truth is, why is it an aberration? He's also learning from this. He learned from the same place. Sachakol, the light is the same. The glass on the outside is just a different color.
Because the rules of the game is the code, according to Jewish law. So if it's in the code...
No, lav dafka.
Because the Rebbe himself would say, like for example, Shlomo Kala.
Yeah, of course the Rebbe would say, but even that alone you're editing what the Rebbe,
it's hard to be subjective about it, that's what I'm saying. Because it's like, the code is kind of...
100%.
The code of the Jewish law.
But maybe he said it because it needed to be. I once spoke to Moshe. I asked Moshe Garelik when I was in Boston, I asked him, I'm like, if you're such a big chassid of the Rebbe was very, very careful with Shulchan Aruch, right? So how could the Rebbe said, the Rebbe was very careful. So if you don't think that the Rebbe really was getting hung up on the details and he didn't care about the scrupularities of Shabbos, for example, so why was he a whole time telling people that you have to adhere to? So he gave me a good mashal, actually. He said the Rebbe really was a Rebbe for everybody, but mostly for the easiest denominator. In other words, basically, he gave me a good mashal. He said where a father has two sons, and one son is 2 years old, and one son is 20 years old, and they're going to cross the street, and he says, you have to hold my hand. And if he asked the father if he has to hold the hand when they're crossing the street, the father would say, you have to hold my hand. Really, the father just means for the 2-year-old has to hold his hand. But he can't say to the 20-year-old, you don't have to hold my hand, because then the 2-year-old he's gonna run into the street, right? So plus there's a lot of reasons why the Rebbe would say things like this that you could. The Rebbe was he was a CEO of a company. He inherited a company and he had to maintain the. But I believe, and I really believe, that in all of the extremely rigorous, misgeres that the Rebbe outlined for us, he put a lot of seeds of what some people might consider heresy, except I don't believe it's heresy at all. I believe that it's the highest level of emunah. The Rebbe put in us these little things where he was encouraging us, go on your own, make your own chidushim. Yeah, you'll fuck up, don't worry. That also is good. If you fuck up, sachakal, you're a human being. But if you don't fuck up because you're too afraid, so what have you done? You've laid waste to my legacy. So yeah, but on the other hand, it's like halacha vein moedim kain. This is what needs to be done, but I can't tell you. If I tell you to, and I really believe I cannot see it any other way. The Rebbe, to me personally, cannot be understood in any other way unless you want to paint him as a tyrant, which for me is not acceptable. So I absolutely believe that the Rebbe small things. Go become a shliach. Don't ask me shilas. I'll go ask someone else a shaila. Gershom Edel is amazing. He has thousands of letters from the Rebbe. Should I go to the bathroom? Should I go to this restaurant? Where should I go? Which is beautiful because some people need it. But I can't imagine that the Rebbe really wanted people a whole time to ask him what to do. Oh, sure. I think you have to take that to its logical conclusion, which is if you have to go and drop the whole thing and become a big apikoidis or I don't know, whatever, or you have to go and wander here. I don't think that Rebbe set a parameter. I think that Rebbe set a parameter and he said, go, you have to go out of it.
What you're saying is really, really intense, and I'm just like it. I mean, it's not that I don't agree. It's just that it would just be the ultimate paradox. Not saying. Not judging that, not giving it any value, but just saying that would be the most neisei hafachim, as we say, the opposite, to say that which that the Rebbe represented, which is a specific way of Yiddishkeit, of world redemption, even. Can have it can even ride and find redemption through the most dark or even the abyss almost. Actually, you're reminding me of a maimer from the Rebbe, which is Bas Lagani from Tafshin Lamed Aleph, which equivalent of, I suppose, 1970, end of 70. So we're 70 or beginning of 71, and there the Rebbe goes into about how the world comes to be from going and the darkness of the world, the tree of knowledge and sin itself, Neira Alila Bnei Adam, and how we've been almost cosmically been deigned to sin, and tracing it regressively back to the diminishment of the moon, and earlier to the first Tzimtzum. And in the very first Tzimtzum, so usually we see Tzimtzum as serving for revelation, just being a momentary transitional state, but not that there is any value in the Tzimtzum itself. Tzimtzum is just darkness, it's absence, and it's like there's nothing there. But since the Rebbe says, we're talking about will or want, that since there was a tzimtzum and it was coming from God's want, or kavanah at least, then that also serves a purpose. And since the tzimtzum can only be tzimtzum since it's bringing out light, it has to reach the most opposite of it, therefore only then to get to the next stage of the light. Therefore, the tzimtzum itself reveals its state of concealment. It is fulfilling its fullness in revealed state, that it is the ultimate concealment. There is in a sense there is an importance given to it, and saying what in this sense of what is Gilui, what is revelation means to be fully that thing and be honest with it. Let's say, speaking on Aveda terms, on psychological terms. So, what is better, a sincere sinner or a fake, person who keeps, does mitzvahs correctly? I don't know. A lot of this is God's cheshbon. Having said that, it is obvious to anyone who reads the Rebbe Sichos or anything that the Rebbe lived and was 100% a frum Jew, according to Shulchan Aruch and all that, and it would be almost extremely postmodern to be able to read into anything of the Rebbe in ways that would take it from the theoretical, at least, to the actual practical. There are a lot of these type of sichos, at least some, that sound antinomian, and in certain ways, and there's a reason, which but no one has said in any way that it was a way to actually live. So, having said that, who's to judge, and we all have our paths and we all have our ways, and the Rebbe showed love to every Jew, any Yid.
I know, but I think it's more the fact that you're saying that the Rebbe was a from Yid, which we know, at least we know it for the time that we know about the Rebbe. We don't know from before 100%, but the fact that it was a from Yid, it's not a stida to this. Verkehrt. In other words, there's not a hira that every person should go in this direction. It's that because you have to have both. You do have to have both. But the only people who should go are the ones who think that they should go. And that's usually very few people. And the reality is most people want to be told what to do, and and there's someone has to step up and tell them what to do. I think that the Rebbe broke every possible boundary, not every possible boundary, but the Rebbe broke more boundaries as far as this is concerned than any other religious leader, from a leader. The Rebbe, we take things like Mitzvah Tefillin for granted, but the truth is, it's all the big poskim of that time were against it, and the Rebbe really didn't. He somehow found a way. Chezzi,
that's precisely my point. There's avoiding taxes and evading taxes. If there's a way, so there's a book Sha'ar Mitzion Ba'alacha, and within the Sha'ar Mitzion Ba'alacha, he finds every way api halacha how you could do this, how you could do that. So the Rebbe, that precisely the question, but that's the parameter. That's the rules of the game. If you could avoid taxes, if you're offshore or whatever, a maisa, and you could do it, and that means if it means the an alien, that's what Hashem wants. If it's out of halacha and we can't figure out, then it's breaking those are the rules of the game. Now, it doesn't mean again. If someone's traveling, where we're traveling, so and it's also context of who we're talking to. There's an incredible yechidus with Frank Lautenberg in English.
The senator, the senator.
The senator. In those days, he was the head of the federation. It's an incredible conversation in English, and the Rebbe spells out there really his world outlook, and in one place he tells the Rebbe, like, I get it, yeah, we don't care about the non-Jewish people. Let the other people take care of them. The Rebbe says, I do care about them. In other words, the Rebbe is saying that the Jewish Federation money is earmarked for Jewish causes. And he's saying that it should go for Jewish causes. But the Rebbe says, don't think for a second that I don't care about another human being. So in other words, as human beings, the Rebbe spells out there his liberal sensibilities, which are like huge, okay? At the same time, with him, the Rebbe tells him, what shul do you go to? He says, I go to a Reform temple. The Rebbe says, you ever consider going to conservative? It's very interesting. He's talking to him, and the question is, if we're headed to Lubavitch, if we're on that wagon, we're walking there, we're on a wagon, everyone's going to Mefartim Lubavitch, we can be walking there or going in Mefartim Lubavitch. I've always think that it's hard to think. I think Baruch concurs, at least that there's a wink to any way out of that. There
seems to be. Remember, there's like you can see it on dollars actually. I was noticing this on the Sunday dollars after Chav Ches Nisan, right? After the $2 was Kent, right? And one person asked the Rebbe this, and the Rebbe answers one way, and almost very similar question, but the tone is different, and the person asking it is different, and the Rebbe says something else. And then, without going into the examples, to get lost in that, and you see that happen all over. One person asks this, and it gets to this, which is going back to what Chezzi said. You want me to tell you what to do? Fine, I'll tell you what it says, what the script says. But you want to connect with me and follow the way I set it out from day one, which is don't try to ride my coattails. Do your thing. I'm not here to babysit. I want you to do you and spread this message your way and not make this about me or about a script. Then I'm here for you that way. I may not be able to tell you outright that, and by the way, this Frank Lautenberg thing and all these other stories that we love hyping up, what do you think? The Rebbe is encouraging this Reform rabbi to be effective and spread Yiddishkeit within his own element, and the Rebbe can't officially condone or endorse his faction or way of Yiddishkeit, because the Rebbe is, like you said, a frum Yid. I wouldn't say frum, but Erlich, and I don't like that word. We're fine. Okay, fine. Yeah, Shulchan Aruch Yid, yeah. But
Rom is a gala.
yes, but
Full of issues, wenig.
So what? The Rebbe is encouraging these people to do their thing, but somehow when it comes to Lubavitchers, the Rebbe can't tolerate that people have their own processes and ways. And that's not to say that I have any illusions that the Rebbe didn't have standards within the confines of shlichus or official Lubavitch institutions or anything like that. And the Rebbe was very much, into that. And you're going to do this, then you can't carry my name on the institution and all that stuff. But outside of that, I'm not talking about institution of Lubavitch here. I'm just talking about individuals. Individuals being a part of Chassidus and Chabad Chassidus, but living their lives and charting their journey, and not to stifle that, and not to feel like I'm either tethered to this exact formula or there's no place for me. That is not, there's no source of that within the Rebbe's, like from day one. Don't come and quote me the way I know that it's not. The thing is that everyone around me, not everyone, but it's significant to the degree that this Musar schmooze that went around is a sentiment that is at best accepted reluctantly, but at worst shared by many people. And I'm not going to go into detail and give you many, many, many examples that I've experienced personally that they feel that this is because it's like, seems to be like the loudest and the harshest. It's probably where the buck is, and anything other than that is just the way the nice little package that we've made for Chabad houses, to sell this thing.
I can I confess something? I know we've been talking already for I don't know how long, and honestly, for maybe 50% of what we're speaking, I have no freaking clue what we're talking about. I mean, I know we're talking about it, but it feels like very impressionistic. I know we're not getting too personal, and but at the same time, it feels like we're like what we speak about at Chassidim Farbrengen.
Okay. I'll speak very, very bluntly without making it personal.
Yeah, Rabbi Shmuly, you have children?
Yeah.
How old are they?
We have one girl, and she's going to be 15 this summer. Then we have a boy who's 13. Then we have a girl who's 11, a 7-year-old, 4-year-old, and a 15-month-old.
Wow, that's incredible. That's a whole tribe already. So a lot of what we were discussing tonight is not just abstract, because it's the stuff you must be pondering about how to transmit this to your very own children.
As a perfect way to segue to the question I wanted to ask you, which is, you do appreciate that, if you want to call it on the managerial level or whatever, that there is a lack of transmitting of these beautiful sentiments that the Rebbe shared over all those decades. What, in your opinion, is, and I'm sure there's many things, but what overriding antidote can be applied so that is not lost once it's being transmitted by individuals who bringing their own stuff?
The reality is that it seems that there's no way. Okay, let me back up for a second. Let me say this. There's a Seilach Harav, okay? So the Seilach Harav piece is that sometimes we can't self-medicate. We need someone we're going to need to have some sort of mentorship, some sort of Hasidic coach or whatever you want to call it. That aside, even with a Rav, the Rav will have his subjective, the way he sees it, and that's good, because sometimes we're slave to our own subjective way, and you need a good opinion. I found, and that's what I said before, and again, it could sound parochial, it could sound trite, self-righteous, whatever, is that the only way is to bypass the managerial level is but to listen to the Farbrengens ourselves. That's what I was saying. I wasn't trying to so when we listen to the Farbrengens ourselves, we know for sure that that we are processing the way we're processing it. That's what I'm saying. So it's a long. Now you speak Yiddish. You speak very, very well, and I think the hardest part is getting. It's. I'll tell you what it is. I say this, that they say that like youth is like wasted on the young. So you could say the same thing perhaps that like Chassidish things are somehow only for the Chassidish people in a certain way. We feel very intimidated because we're listening to Farbrengen and we're not so holy. So I'm listening to Farbrengen. But who said you have to be so, like, once you can get past that, and that's because we're like, then you can easily listen. I'm saying, I don't like the word you, it's a strong term. Here everything is like, and yet the Rebbe's letters, everything is in third person. One can listen to Farbrengen, a full Farbrengen, and then it's 4 hours, and then we're like, oh wow, and then we're drinking straight from the tap. We bypass the managerial level. Now, what to do with the whole Lubavitch, I don't know, but for at least we're talking about ourselves, and listen, drink straight from the tap. Read the Igris itself, read the Sichas itself, then there's like what I gave a course on different Jewish thinkers. So on the Rebbe, this is the way at least I process it, that there's sea, air, and land. Seal, the Navy SEAL, the sea, air, land. There's a sea. There's like the Likutei Sichos. There's like the sea of the talks, which is different than the previous Rebbeim. The previous Rebbeim, the interface between the Rebbeim and the Chassidim were Maimarim primarily. By the Rebbe, it's Farbrengens, and the Maimarim are there's less Maimarim than Sichos, so to speak. Not so to speak. That's a fact. So the idea is that there is the sea, the Sichos Kodesh and the Svadius and Teres Menachem, Likutei Sichos. Then there's the ear of the Maimarim, and then there's the land, which is the practical, the Igris. If one's on a healthy diet of that, then we have a healthy Judaism. I'll say like this: the first time, because we're talking about like Mashpiyim and this. I was fortunate when I went to New Haven. There's a Mashpiyah, the Rabbi Reinitz. He's unison Reinitz. He has very healthy Judaism, a very healthy Chassidus. You never hear any of this talk about you're nothing. None of that. Never any of the pathological stuff. It was very refreshing, and for me, it's a miracle that we crossed paths because I never had that piece. I was listening to the Farbrengens or wasn't listening to the Farbrengens. I never had, and later on because. I never really had that. The Judaism wasn't coming from the managerial level, so to speak. I had, Baruch Hashem, a good experience that the one person who I connected with later on, I was already 20, he's like I felt like we were on a similar frequency. And then I was with the Farbrengens. That's the only way. I'm not going to, and it's some of the things you're describing are deep-rooted and it can't be undone. So we have to listen to the Farbrengens and encourage other people to listen to Farbrengens. And the sound bites are sound bites. I mean, you have to listen to the whole Farbrengen. And I'm going to say even more than that. The Rebbe says, the first thing the Rebbe says about Farbrengen is that the first Farbrengen, the Rebbe says this, is that so you know we're the seventh generation. We're Shvi, Dar Shvi, tradition. So all the Rebbe's talks are in context to the Dar Shishi, Dar Chamishi, Dar Shishi. So I know myself, I'm not going to understand the Tafshin and Beis Sichas that I learn if I don't learn Likutei Torah that week. I know it sounds very, because it's the whole picture, it's the whole gestalt. And I'm going to say even more than that. If I don't learn the Gemara, if I don't learn Shulchan Aruch and the Gemara, I'm not going to, it's a hyperlink. The whole Judaism is the Torah, the Nevi'im, the Ksuvim, the Gemara, the Yeshalma, the Bali. It's a hyperlink, one hyperlink, next hyperlink. And then there's the Rebbe, and it's all in the context. Then all of a sudden it becomes very rich, and then all this becomes background noise. It's static.
But the implication of what you're saying then is that, let's say, so you're teaching that to your kids, and you're steeping them in this incredible tradition and in all of the Rebbe's Torah and in everything, and now you trust them to make the right decision. You're not going to tell them what they should do. I
don't have a choice. I mean, kids have their own agency. They can do whatever they want to do. All you can do is give your kids convey and try at least to through your character, if possible, because the kids see more who you are than what you say, and they know and convey to that, and hopefully they want to opt in through how they find through their prism. But again,
I think what Chaim was saying is that so all of that is good and fine. Right. But now the kid just needs the confidence to realize that they could the bottom line is immaterial, because if a person does what they think is the right thing, who cares what 100%. They're doing what they think is right. So now what do you need? You need to just give them all the good stuff, and part of that is giving them the confidence, the strength to realize that they do have agency, because they do have agency, but to make them realize and recognize that they're the ones who are going to decide now what they're going to do with all of it, and that they shouldn't feel that there is only one way that all of this could end up, that there's only one logical conclusion to this. It could go anywhere. It could go in any kind of direction, and especially because every person is different, no two people are going to interpret or even be able to absorb this information in the same way. So naturally, it's gonna be manifest in different ways, and you have no idea what those ways are going to be.
Put it this way: am I telling them to make this decision? I've never said make this decision. Don't make this decision. Put it this way. Let me phrase it this way, because everything's context. There is no way a kid growing up in Manhattan, my kid or anyone's kid, can't notice the imposing temples of modern, the Western world. The Met is massive. It's a pracht. It's gorgeous. This represents the Western world. Okay. And then we have our Torah. Okay. And we have our humble little Chabad house. Now, it's not about this. It's not about the size of the place, but kids notice this. They notice that. All I can do is that say this has value. I'm going to tell them, compare, contrast, and make a decision between this and that and what it truly represents.
That's good. But for example, me, the first time in my life that I ever realized that I did have agency, truly.
Right.
You would expect that. My parents also raised me very, very healthy. Was when I was, I think, 29 years old.
Wow.
29 is the first time I ever actually made a decision and that I felt was truly my own decision. So, and I think I'm a relatively healthy guy.
Now, your parents happen to be, from what I know about them, are like healthy people. Super healthy, not like this. So. Do you feel that they had to validate? No, because it sounds a little condescending. Let me rephrase this. Did you have kindness when you were 29? How come my parents didn't give me agency or didn't sit me down and validate me to have my own agency? Because who needs them to give you agency, Bichlal?
For a short period, I did, and then I got through that as well. And so are you suggesting that
you tell your kids you have agency right now? There is. I don't
know if it helps to say the words, or you could see when a person I don't know how to educate. I don't know how to educate a person. The only thing that I could imagine is that you see the difference between children, or butz and mekatfe. You see already once they're adults, you're gonna see how if they're gonna be able. You see the result later. If this person was able to make a decision on their own or not, or if they felt enslaved or indentured.
The way I feel is that the odds are so stacked against me in terms of what goes on in the city and all the noise that I just want to be that voice. Okay. Now I don't say you can't do this or you can't do that, but I want to be that voice in the same way. a person doesn't sit his kid down and say, Herzachai. There's Islam, there's Christianity, there's Judaism. You know, I'm personally pushing Judaism, or I'm pushing. You know, there's communism, there's democracy. It's a method of parenting. I don't know if I'm ready for that. Open-mindedness.
No, that's not what I'm suggesting either. By the way,
Okay.
No, if I can't.
Okay.
That's why I don't know what I know what the result ends up looking like. The question is, how do you get there? But I think even just being able to acknowledge that a lot of people growing up, most of us, especially in any kind of dense community, this is a community kind of thing where it's very, very difficult for a person to, on their own, realize that they're a person on their own outside, besides for their community, you know. And I don't think that it's necessarily this whole, you know, people are like, oh, well, look at the Amish, right? They have the Rumspringe, and 80% of them come back and they become Amish. But that's not really, they make them feel, this is what Chaim was saying earlier, is that well, you were saying that it's not like this, but you make, in codependent relationships, this could happen where you make the person realize you have no life without me. And then you say, you're free to go. And they can't go because they have no life without you. Very dangerous thing. I really genuinely believe I believe in Torah and I believe in mitzvahs because I believe that you don't need to shove it on a person. They're going to take it on their own. You just give it to them. And if they don't, then they shouldn't. It's like the thing with Shmuel Munkis where the Alter Rebbe said, should I turn myself in? He said, for further reading, you have nothing to worry.
For further reading on this, on what we're discussing, there was a German philosopher in the 19th century, I forgot her name, who has her thesis as Gemeinschaft and Gesellschaft. That's her thesis. Basically writing about people who are part of a community, and there's something amazing about being insulated around like community with people but then it's possible, implied or overtly, that if you step out of line in some weird way, you're pushed back in, that type of thing, which it's a sociological phenomenon, not necessarily a Jewish phenomenon. It's a sociological thing, and it happens in any close-knit community. And a Gesellschaft, you know, you have people where we live, very successful, they're living in an apartment on 57th Street by themselves, never, and they're free to do whatever they want, and they're free at the same time. They'll be the first one to tell you that there's a certain loneliness. They're not necessarily willing to trade it. I'm just saying that it's a trade-off. A person needs to have, you're right, the person needs to have the agency to decide what they want to do, which side they want to be on. And since it's like there's a big spectrum within the Jewish, and when I talk about Jewish, I talk about within the code, because that's really the parameters. There's a spectrum between mitzvah observance, we'll say, and Torah study, and there's a spectrum between Avas Hashem and Yiras Hashem. So some people are Charedim. They call themselves Charedim. So aside for the technical, it means we're in awe of God. That's who we are. There's emphasis on the awe. Some people, the expression is in Avas Hashem. That's who they are. In some communities, the expression is we're Torah Jewry. Not that they don't do mitzvahs. And some people, our thing is Gemilas Chassidim. Everyone finds their community in different communities, and there's different shades and within the whole gamut of people trying to be on the wagon, which is keeping the Torah and the mitzvahs. Is there room for someone to be on the lonely man of faith? We'll call it. There is such a thing. If and there are many people like that. They're lonely, and because they have their own, they found their own path to Hashem. They just no one's coming along for the ride, and they feel like the one man out.
A lot of it is personality too.
Right, so there's also there's the protectors and the protectees. So if someone's a protectee, you want to be in an affinity program. You want to be in Costco, part of the Costco program because you get free travel. And there's the sociological things. The people, if you're part of this program, there's like a hospitality room in the hospital. You have your own little room with kosher food and stew. There's certain comforts of it. But if a person's a thinking person, and it's difficult, when a person starts to think like, okay, if a person decides they don't want to do anything, that's their own agency. I mean, the question becomes, if a person, and it's a personal question, it's not an intellectual question. They're like, I found this path. And I feel lonely on this path, and it becomes a question: what's more comfortable to do or less comfortable to do, and it's a personal thing. But getting back to your question, the children, a great book, again, and not a Jewish book, is one of the best books ever. Is a book called Far From the Tree. Amazing book, thick book. Basically, the guy has a chapter on the gap between parents and children, fathers and children. He has, one of them is a kid who's severely ill, and he's his father, and basically the point is that parents feel like their kids are an extension of themselves. That's the way you feel. But the kids don't feel that way. And they love your parents. This is an halacha also, the Rambam and Hilchos, a father is a reidef. This is reflected in halacha. The point is that I'll conclude with this story. I heard from my dad, and I'll preface with this, that I'm fortunate that around our Shabbos table were people who were very educated, because my dad taught at the Ivy League Torah Study Program. The National Committee for the Furtherance of Jewish Education has this program where they have college students and they study. So you have guys coming from Oxford, and guys coming from Princeton. I don't know if it's actually all Ivy League, but they're coming from a secular world. And I say secular as a positive, not as a negative. This means that people are educated, they have credentials, and they're opting in to Yiddishkeit as opposed to the other way around, because the grass is always greener on the other side. These are people who are very often, is greener on the other side. So they're interested in Torah, and they're coming from that world, and they're finding value in Torah and in Yiddishkeit and in Chabad Chassidus. And I remember one discussion in particular where my dad told the following story. He says that someone asked the Rebbe, what is this Chabad Chassidus? Like, what exactly? It seems at first glance, before one even knows how to read Hebrew, is that in other Hasidic movements, there's one book. There's like one book or two books. There isn't much volume. When you walk into the Kahas warehouse, there's like a full room of books. I mean, just a sheer volume. How does that, what is this? The Rebbe responded, and very often the Rebbe would give the scientific answers. I guess the premise is that science is fact and Torah is truth. And fact and truth, somehow that you can learn one, there's a crossover, you can learn from one to the other. Okay. There's many examples of the Rebbe using scientific things as like a mashal. Anyway, the Rebbe says that when they started figuring out how to deal with infections, like antibiotics, they would give a little antibiotic, and then the infection would fight, and then this goes back and forth. So what doctors decided to do, or it sort of seemed self-evident at some point, is to just give massive doses of the antibiotics from the get-go, give these big antibiotic doses. The Rebbe says that Chabad Chassidus is a big dose. It's just a massive dose. That's what it is. When it comes, and again, I don't consider myself one of these big educators. The idea is, and this is, I think if someone would like to educate their kids and educate others, is take the big dose, the 5 hours, the IM bays, take the big doses of it, and then like, and hopefully the kid are because we believe it's true though that they will continue with this, and at the same time have at some point in life hopefully make a thoughtful like make their own decision, not just to continue because they just going along with the program, but to own it on their own, like what is the idea the Gemara says about the Kimo Masha Kibul Kvar type thing, right? My daughter, he forced them into it. It's the same thing with education. We went to school, you forced us on the bus. My daughter, this whole thing was forcing me. At some point, we're opting into this, even though there was a barrel, like it was like they were at barrel point. At this point, we say, I want to opt into it. That's the. I never thought this through. Actually, I just kind of doing it. But since you
mentioned the word dose, okay, and the first thing that came to mind was this the mashal that was given for when was it the altar was trying to figure out if you should continue spreading chassidus. Right? The mashal about crush up the diamonds from the crown jewels because that was the remedy, the only remedy available, and that you're ready to have 90 or 95 or 99% of the crown jewel crushed up and go to the garbage, so long as that one little drop would have its necessary effect. And similar to that vein, it was talked about how they started printing chassidus, and you had chassidus strewn about on the streets, but that you didn't stop spreading chassidus for that reason, because at some point it's going to get into the right hands, even if the majority of it is on the street or fallen on deaf ears or the wrong ears. So perhaps that doesn't just mean like neglected, but also misused or misunderstood or used to even validate abusive and self-negating messages, so long as some of it comes through with the positive intention that it was meant for. And
no, that's not what I said.
No, I'm not saying it was. I'm not saying it was. You mentioned that story, and I'm saying
what I'm saying is that I don't think anyone should be giving anyone negative messages. Simply because, to me, the arbiter of what Chabad Chassidus is the Rebbe. And I didn't hear any of that, so I don't know where that comes from.
Right.
That's what I'm saying. So what's better, to tell a kid you're nothing and give him a little Chassidus? Not necessarily. I don't know.
No. What I'm saying is there's an inevitability that when you have something as powerful as Chassidus, and there are people who don't necessarily hear that for what it is, they will attribute and add some of their own pathologies to it, and they'll pass that on, and they'll find whatever negative messages that they have about themselves and project that onto the chassidus or whatever. And that's going to happen because we have human beings, and that's part of it, and maybe that's exactly how it's supposed to be. But that so long as some of that truth comes through at the end, because listen, it ain't all that bad, obviously, considering that I must have heard truth in between, so that I knew that it can't really mean this, and then eventually in the right time I wanted to, and I did go back to the source and found what I believe it really always meant, like you were talking about. So I know you have to go, but what my that's what I was starting to get, because when you said the word dose, but
one track
just
mind.
And I heard you say something once. You were trying to describe someone, and you were finding the iciest. You were struggling with how to describe the guy. So you just said, you know what? I have the same Rebbe as him. Right? We share the same Rebbe, which is to imply that there's many people who you technically have the same Rebbe, but you don't really have the same Rebbe. And I don't know. I believe that we have the same Rebbe, and I believe that us sitting around the table pretty much share the same Rebbe. We mentioned Rabbi Shalom Posner. He once famously told someone, said, don't bother me, Rabbi, I don't believe in God. And he said, well, the God you don't believe in, I don't either believe in. But there is, and I'm from people I speak to, that there is this, and not just by people who are in it. Like, I have no intention of communicating, like a really intention of dialoguing with them, and they don't want to hear what I have to say, and whatever. But I have many friends who have left, so to speak, at least as far as their lifestyle, but they still are attached to it emotionally. They want to be a part of it, but they feel like almost like I can't really connect with it because this is what it means. And a funny way that I tend to put it is people even say like, I don't even believe in this. I don't even believe in God. I said, okay, that's fine. That's fine. But do you also believe that God hates you? Meaning, like, it's so much, it's very possible to have that kind of, because if you grew up in it, to have that kind of emotional thing going on where it's like you can tell yourself, oh, whatever, I don't even believe in it. But that does not really work. Can you take that to the bank if emotionally you still feel like a sense of rejection? So I don't believe in God, but F him. And I think he hates me, right? So I guess where I'm going with this is those who can go to the source and see what it really means, we're not worried about them. And I need to keep refreshing that. It's not like I had that once. Like I can still, at this point, I do it myself. I'll project my own stuff onto it. Like I don't need a bad mashpia to do that or a bad parent. I'll do that myself. I got the poison enough within me to do that. And depending on the day that I'm having, I'll do that or I'll do the opposite. But, and I think you spoke to it as far as that's the quickest, surest way to do it is to go to the source. But this was really my way of saying, like, whatever, like, thank you for being a friend who has that Rebbe and is always, freely sharing that Rebbe with me and others. And thanks for doing this and coming and sharing your time and staying later than you could have. And for being someone who's not just in it, but representing and yet capable and desiring to have this kind of dialogue and to share yourself.
Chaim, I want to thank you for hosting this incredible Farbrengen, for the amazing barbecue, and for more than the Gashmias, being a voice that working through all the different layers of this, because there's so many different sides and pieces and layers to this, and the premise of all of this is that the Eibishter is good, the Torah is good, the Rebbe is good. We have to discover it, as opposed to someone saying it doesn't work for me, and I'm going to walk away from it because the wealth of what we have here is so incredible. And I'm going to start and go into the next thing is that when someone's, sometimes it was. We could, at this point, the tape is over already because I don't want to be recorded on this. Is that like when you tell somebody, like, imagine you show up to the Dead Sea, 5:00 in the morning. It's amazing, okay? It's amazing. And he tells them, you have to go to mikveh. Now go to mikveh. He just destroyed it, the whole thing. Because now I wanted to float in the Dead Sea. Now I have to go to mikveh. So somehow it's like, because of the experience of, first of all, I feel like someone's taking my agency from me. It's becoming religious. I would like to rediscover the beauty, if we can discover then the beauty within it itself, and strip away the sociological thing. That would be nice. That's what I'm.
Personal, like a lot, like the Vart that from the Baal Shem Tov, from the Talmud brings from the Baal Shem Tov, that the Geula is, the Rebbe would bring it down. Is pratis, and it's b'chol zman and b'chol makom. It's in every place. That it's personal. Redemption starts from within.
This is a beautiful thing the Rebbe said, and the late years would say it very often. Beautiful, pit of self-expression, if you will. Mari Naim says, the Iskayim Banu Mikra Shekasa. So we say Yantav. The Iskayim Banu Mikra Shekasa. V'nach Hashem Ruach Chachma Ruach Bina Ruach. Right. So he says the Iskayim Banu. We think for a second we're Mashiach. The Iskayim Banu Mikra Shekasa. V'nach Hashem. It's about Mashiach. We think for a second we're Mashiach. He says yeah. He says everyone has an inner Mashiach, and in some way we're all in Galus, and we need to express personal Mashiach. It's a beautiful pro-life Torah, which the Rebbe in the later years quoted quite often, and I think that's what we're looking to do. And I want to thank you because I'm taking this journey with you, and I apologize sometimes it's parochial, preachy, and offensive.
That's what makes you a great rabbi.